The Kelmar Sector Military Academy floated in the void between three star systems, a monument to interstellar cooperation that looked less like a school and more like someone had convinced a small moon to get really serious about geometric patterns. Established 2 centuries ago after the Unification Wars, it served as the premier training ground for military officers from 47 member species of the Galactic Concordance. The architecture alone cost more than some planetary GDP figures, all gleaming alloys and projected energy fields that hummed with the kind of pretentious efficiency only achieved by committee design across multiple species with entirely different concepts of aesthetics. Inside Training Hall Sigma 9, the atmosphere crackled with competition and barely suppressed xenophobic superiority complexes. Advanced Marksmanship Theory and Application, Course Code AMTA 7749, attracted the best shooters from across known space. The best, the brightest, and apparently the most insufferable. The current semester roster included representatives from species who had been perfecting the art of hitting targets from ludicrous distances, since humanity was still figuring out that pointy rocks worked better than round ones. Commander Vecthrol, a 4-armed Quillian whose exoskeleton bore scars from conflicts most cadets only read about in historical databases, surveyed the assembled students with the expression of someone who had seen far too much and slept far too little. His compound eyes could track 17 separate movements simultaneously, which proved useful when managing a classroom full of apex predators from different evolutionary trees who all thought they were the apex est. Today's roster included Zephyros, a Venari whose crystalline body could calculate wind resistance and bullet drop before most species finished exhaling. There was Crawlus, a massive Dranthian whose people had been using magnetically accelerated projectiles since the Bronze Age, assuming they had bronze, which they did not. But the translator always got confused on that point. And Thesix, a lithe Moravian, whose 6 eyes could see in spectrums that made infrared look primitive, and who never let anyone forget it. And then there was the human. She walked into the hall carrying what could only be described as an antique by galactic standards. While her classmates arrived with weapons that looked like they belonged in museums of modern art, humming with power cores and bristling with computational arrays, she carried something that appeared to have been assembled in a particularly well-equipped garage. The rifle was long, yes, almost comically so by the standards of species who had miniaturized lethality into packages the size of pistols. But it was the accessories that really caught attention. Or rather, the lack thereof. No holographic targeting display, no AI-assisted wind calculation module, no gravitational lens compensator, no quantum entanglement range, finder. Instead, there were manual adjustment knobs, physical scopes with actual glass lenses, a bipod that folded out with mechanical clicks that echoed embarrassingly in the high-tech hall. And most bewildering of all, a small notebook attached to the stock with what appeared to be actual paper inside. Paper. In space. In a military academy. In the year 2847 by human reckoning. The snickering started immediately. "Is that a museum piece?" Zephyros chimed, their voice resonating like wind through crystal caves, which was exactly what it was. I thought humans had at least reached the computational age. "Perhaps it is ceremonial," Crawlus rumbled, each word vibrating through the deck plating. "My research indicates humans cling to symbolic rituals. Perhaps this is a religious artifact." Thesix's laugh sounded like water burbling over rocks, if the rocks were judging you. "No targeting computer at all. How delightfully rustic. What is next? Throwing stones?" The human said nothing. She moved to her assigned station, number 7, with economical movements that suggested either supreme confidence or complete obliviousness to the social dynamics unfolding around her. Her expression remained neutral. neither smiling at the jabs nor frowning. She simply existed in her space, hands moving with practiced efficiency as she began unpacking additional equipment from a case that looked military issue but predated most of the technology in the room by several decades. Commander Vecthrall watched this with 2 of his eyes, while the other 15 monitored the rest of the class. He had seen many things in his 4 decades of service. Fought in battles where the difference between victory and death came down to millimeters and milliseconds. He had trained thousands of cadets, many of whom had gone on to distinguished careers, and several of whom had gone on to distinguished funerals after ignoring his lessons. He recognized patterns that younger instructors missed. He said nothing, yet. The human continued her setup. From her case emerged a small weather station, compact but entirely mechanical. A handheld anemometer that spun in the recycled atmosphere of the hall. An actual physical data book, spiral-bound, filled with tables and numbers in handwriting. A rangefinder that worked on laser reflection, primitive but functional. And then, most bizarrely, a small beanbag that she positioned under the rear of her rifle. A beanbag, filled with beans, probably. In a facility where anti-gravity fields could stabilize a firing platform to within a nanometer. "Instructor," Zephyros called out, unable to contain themselves. Is this truly regulation equipment? I question whether such primitive apparatus meets Academy standards for safety and effectiveness. Before Vecthrall could respond, Krullis added, "Perhaps the human requires accommodation for technological deficiency? I understand some species develop at different rates. No shame in admitting inadequacy." That got laughs from several stations. The human glanced up briefly, made eye contact with Krullis, then returned to checking her scope rings with a small screwdriver. The complete lack of reaction somehow made the insult feel less satisfying, which only annoyed the Dranthian more. Thesix slithered closer to Station 7, their 6 eyes examining the rifle like it was a particularly puzzling piece of primitive art. What is the effective range of such equipment? 500 meters, perhaps 600 if conditions are favorable. The human looked up again, and for just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Not anger. Something closer to amusement, but buried deep, like she was enjoying a private joke that nobody else was in on yet. "Depends," she said simply, then returned to her preparations. "Depends on what?" Thesix pressed. "On what I am aiming at." That got more laughs. Oh, how wonderfully vague, how charmingly evasive. Clearly the human was out of her depth and attempting to maintain dignity through cryptic responses. Classic defense mechanism observed in species confronting their own inadequacy. Commander Vecthrall's mandibles clicked together in what Quillians did instead of sighing. "Cadets, to your stations. We begin in 5 cycles. Today's exercise evaluates long-range precision under simulated combat conditions. Targets will appear at ranges from 800 to 3,000 meters across various environmental conditions. You will have exactly 100 seconds to acquire, calculate, and engage each target. Scoring is based on accuracy, time to engagement, and ammunition efficiency." The cadets settled into their positions with the buzzing excitement of apex predators finally allowed to do what evolution designed them for. Weapons hummed to life. Targeting computers initialized with cheerful chirps, and holographic displays painted the air with ballistic data and environmental readouts. At Station 7, the human pulled a small cloth from her pocket and cleaned her scope lenses. With a cloth, by hand. The first target materialized at 1,000 meters, a standard humanoid silhouette against a simulated rocky terrain background. Wind data scrolled across the public display. 15 kilometers per hour, left to right, temperature 14 degrees standard, Pressure 1.2 atmospheres. Zephyros engaged first. Their weapon barely made a sound, just a soft magnetic thump as the projectile accelerated down the barrel. The targeting computer had done all the work, calculating trajectory, compensating for wind, adjusting for the minuscule gravitational variations in the hall. The projectile struck the target dead center, 2 centimeters from the marked kill zone. Excellent shot by anyone's standards. Time to engagement, 3.4 seconds. Crawlis fired next. The Dranthian's massive rifle cracked with authority, the sound dampened by the hall's acoustic management, but still impressive. Another center mass hit, this time 4 centimeters from perfect. Time to engagement, 4.1 seconds. Thessex took their time, all 6 eyes processing information that their weapons computer integrated into a firing solution. When they fired, the round struck so close to center that the holographic display briefly flickered trying to measure the deviation. Time to engagement, 5.7 seconds. Down the line it went, each cadet engaging with their sophisticated equipment, each achieving respectable accuracy in respectable time. The weapons were marvels of engineering, capable of making average shooters good and good shooters exceptional. Then came Station 7. The human had settled into position, her body forming angles that looked uncomfortable to species with different joint configurations. She pressed her cheek against the stock, eye aligned with the scope, her breathing changing. Not stopping, but slowing. Each breath deeper and more controlled than the last. Her right hand rested on the trigger guard, not the trigger. Not yet. She consulted her physical notebook, actually flipped pages with her fingers, found whatever data she sought. Her hand moved to the scope, making manual adjustments with small, precise movements. Click, click, 2 adjustments. Then she touched the windage knob. Click, 1 more. 15 seconds had passed, an eternity in modern combat. Her breathing steadied further, settling into a rhythm that looked almost meditative. The rifle, unsupported by stabilization fields or gyroscopic mounts, rested on that ridiculous beanbag in her shoulder, held steady by muscle and bone and nothing else. 20 seconds. At other stations, cadets exchanged glances. Was she having equipment failure? Did she not understand the exercise? Thessex opened their mouth to make another quip about primitive technology. Then the human went perfectly still, not motionless in the way of machines, still in the way of predators in the instant before they strike, that moment where even breathing seems negotiable. The kind of stillness that prey animals recognize on an instinctive level as very, very bad news for their continued existence. The rifle fired. The sound was different from the magnetic accelerators and plasma projectors. Louder, more visceral. The kind of chemical explosion that humanity had been perfecting since someone first put gunpowder in a tube and pointed it at something they wanted to stop existing. Old technology. Proven technology. Effective technology. The round struck the target precisely in the marked kill zone, so centered that the measurement system recorded 0 deviation. Time to engagement, 23.6 seconds. Acceptable, Vecthrall commented, his voice neutral. Though engagement time requires improvement. The human said nothing, already preparing for the next target. Target 2 appeared at 1,500 meters. Wind increased to 25 kilometers per hour, gusting. The difficulty had jumped significantly. Most cadets' targeting computers took longer to calculate solutions, their engagement times climbing into the 6 to 8 second range. Accuracy remained good, but not perfect. The increased distance and wind causing several shots to drift into acceptable, but not exceptional zones. The human took 31 seconds. 0 deviation. Target 3. 2,000 meters. Crossing wind. Simulated rain, reducing visibility. Engagement times across the class stretched to 10 seconds, 12, 15. Accuracy scores began showing more variance. These were difficult shots even with computer assistance, requiring the weapon's predictive algorithms to work overtime. The human took 42 seconds, 0 deviation. By target 4, the mockery had stopped. Zephyros's crystalline structure had shifted to a deeper blue, indicating confusion. Krallis had stopped firing altogether, watching Station 7 with 2 of their eyes, while the other 3 tried to focus on their own performance. Thesix had coiled into a tighter spiral, all 6 eyes fixed on the human who was doing something that should not be possible with equipment that primitive. Target 5 materialized at 2,500 meters, the maximum effective range for most of the weapons in the hall. Wind data showed gusts up to 35 kilometers per hour, variable direction. Temperature fluctuations. Simulated atmospheric distortion from heat shimmer. This was the kind of shot that required cutting-edge technology to achieve consistency. The human's process remained unchanged. Observe, calculate manually, using that absurd paper notebook. Adjust the scope with those mechanical clicks that suddenly did not sound quite so ridiculous. Settle into position, breathe, that strange stillness. Fire, 54 seconds, 0 deviation. Commander Vecthral's mandibles clicked rapidly now, a Quillian expression of intense interest. 2 of his arms crossed over his chest, while the other 2 manipulated his data pad, pulling up information. His compound eyes narrowed, focusing multiple viewpoints on Station 7. Target 6 appeared at 3,000 meters, maximum range for the exercise. At this distance, a human-sized target appeared as little more than a speck, even with magnification. Wind, heat, the curvature of the hall's artificial gravity field, minute variations in air density, even the rotation of the floor relative to the target, all factored into the equation. This was a shot designed to challenge the best equipment operated by the best shooters. Most cadets took between 15 and 20 seconds. Several missed entirely, their rounds striking outside the designated target zone. Those who hit averaged deviations of 10 to 20 centimeters from center, still lethal on a living target, but far from perfect. The human's process remained exactly the same. If the impossible distance intimidated her, nothing in her body language suggested it. She consulted her notebook longer this time, cross-referencing multiple pages. Her fingers made more adjustments to the scope, each click deliberate. She checked her position, made a minute change to how the rifle rested on the beanbag. Settled, breathed, found that predatory stillness, fired, 1 minute and 8 seconds. The holographic display updated, 0 deviation. The hall went silent, not the focused silence of concentration, but the stunned silence of assumptions being violently dismantled. Vecthral set down his datapad. With 2 hands, he gestured for the class to hold position. With his other 2, he signaled to the observation gallery above the hall. Within moments, 3 additional instructors appeared, descending via gravlift. Master Sergeant Prolix, a Kethran whose species had invented precision shooting before most of the galaxy discovered metallurgy. Captain Ylira, human herself, head of the Academy's Tactical Warfare Department. And Chief Instructor Vorn, a Selenite whose tactical acumen was literally legendary. They gathered near Station 7, speaking in tones too low for the cadets to hear clearly. The human remained in position, waiting for the next target, apparently unconcerned that half the senior staff had materialized behind her. Vecthral approached the station directly. "Cadet," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned through survival. Remain in position. Instructors will observe your next engagement. Target 7 appeared. 3,000 meters again, but now with added complications. Moving target, tracking left to right at simulated infantry running speed. Variable wind. Reduced visibility from simulated smoke. This was not just difficult. This was the kind of shot most species would not attempt without AI assistance. The human seemed entirely unbothered by her audience. She watched the target move, tracking it with the scope, calculating. More notebook consultation, scope adjustments. Then something none of the instructors expected. She adjusted her position slightly, aiming not at the target, but at empty space ahead of it. Leading the target, calculating intercept, in her head, with no computer, the stillness, the breath, the shot. The round intersected with the target at precisely the moment both occupied the same space. Dead center. Time, 1 minute 14 seconds. Captain Illyra, the human instructor, leaned close to Vecthrall. Her words were whispered, but in the silence of the hall, several cadets with enhanced hearing caught fragments. Only snipers shoot like that. Modern militaries do not train this anymore. Takes years to develop. Humans stopped because computers were easier. Vecthrall's mandibles clicked in understanding. He gestured to the other instructors, and they retreated to confer more privately. The human at Station 7 finally broke position, rolling her shoulders to work out tension, completely unaware that she had just caused a minor crisis among the teaching staff. Zephyros found their voice first, crystals chiming with uncertainty. I do not understand. How is this possible? The computational requirements alone should exceed organic capability. Crawlis rumbled agreement. Our weapons perform these calculations in microseconds. No biological neural system can match such speed. Which is why, Thesix added slowly, 6 eyes blinking in sequence. We rely on computers. But she is not matching our speed. She is matching our accuracy, with significantly inferior equipment. The logical conclusion is disturbing. The human finally spoke, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet hall. Your equipment is not superior, just different, serves a different purpose. How can you claim manual calculation competes with computational precision? Zephyros demanded, frustration bleeding into their harmonic voice. The human picked up her rifle, checking it with practiced efficiency. Your computers let you shoot very well, very quickly. They make you effective. They do not make you snipers. Explain the distinction, Crawlis said, leaning forward with genuine curiosity replacing condescension. A marksman, the human said, settling back into position as Target 8 appeared, is someone who can hit a target. A sniper is someone who decides which target, when, and why. Your computer tells you where to aim. I decide where the shot goes. Different skill, different purpose. She fired. Target 8, 2,800 meters, 46 seconds, 0 deviation. But the computer is faster, Thesix protested. Yes. Target 9, 2,200 meters, 38 seconds, 0 deviation. But can your computer tell you which soldier is the officer? Which vehicle carries the commander? Which power relay will cripple an entire facility? Can it factor in psychological impact of a single shot versus suppressive fire? Can it wait 6 hours without moving for the perfect shot? The alien cadets had no response. Their weapons were designed for modern warfare, fast-paced and computational. Volume of fire, rapid target acquisition, battlefield integration with networked systems, all valuable, all effective, all fundamentally different from what they were watching. Commander Vecthrall returned to the center of the hall. His voice carried authority that silenced all side conversations. Cadets, what you are observing is a discipline most modern militaries have abandoned in favor of technological solutions. Humanity called practitioners of this discipline snipers. Other species had similar traditions. The Kethran ghost shooters, the Moravian shadow strikers, the Dranthian void hunters, all dead arts, replaced by computers and efficiency. He gestured toward Station 7. This cadet represents something we thought obsolete. Manual calculation, patience, the ability to make impossible shots not through technological superiority, but through skill developed over years. Thousands of hours, millions of rounds fired, muscle memory and mental discipline that most of you cannot comprehend because you have never needed to develop it. Prolix, the Kethran instructor, stepped forward. Their translator rendered their whistling language into standard galactic. My ancestors could shoot like this. We stopped teaching it 3 generations ago. Too slow for modern combat, we decided. Too individualistic for coordinated warfare. We were wrong. Not about the combat doctrine, that remained sound, but wrong to think the skill itself was obsolete. Captain Illyra added, in human military history, snipers served purposes beyond simply hitting targets. They gathered intelligence. They disrupted enemy operations through psychological warfare. One skilled sniper could pin down entire units, not through volume of fire but through precision and fear. The enemy knowing that any movement might be their last. That is not something a computer can replicate. Target 10 appeared. Maximum range, maximum difficulty. Every complication the system could generate. The final test. The human did not rush. She took her time, more than 2 minutes, checking calculations, adjusting for variables, settling into that perfect stillness. The hall waited, barely breathing. She fired. The round flew across 3,000 meters of space, through simulated wind and heat and atmospheric distortion, compensating for gravity and the target's movement and a dozen other factors that the human had calculated manually using nothing but paper, mathematics, and experience. 0 deviation. The scoring system updated with final results. The human had scored perfectly on every target. Her engagement times were slower than her classmates, sometimes significantly so. But her accuracy was flawless. Mathematical perfection achieved through biological computation and refined skill. The scores posted on the hall's main display for all to see. Station 7, 100% accuracy. 10 targets eliminated, 0 deviation average. Every other station, respectable accuracy, faster engagement, but none perfect. Vecthrall addressed the class one final time. You're dismissed. Except Station 7. Remain. The cadets filed out, their earlier mockery replaced with thoughtful silence. Zephyros paused at the door, looking back at the human who was carefully packing her primitive rifle into its case. Krollis rumbled something in their native language that the translator rendered as approximately worthy respect. Thesix simply nodded with all 6 eyes, a gesture of acknowledgement between equals. When the hall emptied, Vecthrall approached Station 7 with the senior instructors flanking him. Cadet, he began, then paused. I must admit, your record indicates you are not actually military personnel. You are enrolled as a civilian auditing advanced courses for academic credit. The human nodded. Correct, sir. Your background lists your occupation as competitive target shooter, civilian sport shooting. Another nod. Illyra laughed, the sound sharp with irony. They mocked you for bringing primitive equipment to a military academy. They did not realize that human competitive shooters at the highest levels trained to standards that exceed most military requirements. Because for you, it is not about combat efficiency. It is about perfection. How long? Prolix asked, genuine curiosity in their whistling voice. Have you been shooting? 17 years, the human replied. Started when I was 8. Competed nationally by 12, internationally by 15. I have fired approximately 4 million rounds in training and competition. Vecthral's mandibles clicked rapidly, calculating. 4 million rounds. Most military snipers in active service fire perhaps 50,000 in their entire careers. Different standards, the human said simply. In competition, second place means you are not good enough. In combat, good enough keeps you alive. Both valid, both valuable, just different. Vorn, the Selenite chief instructor who had remained silent, finally spoke. Their translated voice carried weight. The Academy trains warriors for modern combat. Fast, efficient, integrated with technology. This is correct doctrine for contemporary warfare. But we have forgotten that some skills, some disciplines, remain valuable even when they seem obsolete. Perhaps especially when they seem obsolete. The human shouldered her rifle case. If I may ask, sir, what will you tell the other cadets? Vecthral considered this. The truth, that they witnessed a master craftsperson practicing a nearly extinct art. That their technology makes them effective soldiers, but that effectiveness and mastery are not the same thing. That they should neither abandon their tools nor mock those who choose different paths. Also, Illyra added with a smile, we will probably add a notation to the course description warning future cadets that manual calculation techniques, while slower, can achieve precision equal to or exceeding computational methods in the hands of sufficiently skilled practitioners, along with a highlight reel of your performance today, should reduce the mockery. The human smiled for the first time, the expression transforming her neutral features into something warmer. I appreciate that, though I admit the reactions were entertaining. You knew, Vecthral said, not quite a question. You knew they would mock you and did not care. I knew. I have been mocked before. People see old equipment and assume old skills. They forget that some things become classics because they work. Besides, she added, her smile turning slightly dangerous, I find there is deep satisfaction in proving assumptions wrong. As she walked toward the exit, Prolix called after her. Cadet, would you consider a guest lecture? My advanced course would benefit from exposure to manual calculation techniques. She paused at the door. I would be honored, sir. When she left, the 4 instructors remained in the empty hall. Well, Illyra said eventually, that was humbling. Necessary, Vecthral countered. We have become too reliant on our certainties, too confident that technological advancement means unconditional superiority. She reminded us that skill matters, dedication matters, mastery of craft matters. These things do not become obsolete simply because newer methods exist. Vorn made a sound approximating agreement. The cadets learned a valuable lesson today. Arrogance based on equipment is simply arrogance. True superiority comes from the operator, not the tool. Prolix whistled a complex melody that the translator struggled with before settling on. She made it look easy. 4 million rounds. That is not talent. That is dedication that most of us cannot fathom. The instructors departed, leaving the hall empty except for the targeting holograms that still displayed perfect scores next to Station 7. In the corridor outside, the human walked past clusters of cadets who had waited, curiosity overcoming embarrassment. They parted for her, not from fear, but from something closer to respect. She nodded politely, not gloating, not even particularly proud. Just a craftsperson who had demonstrated her craft to an audience that finally understood what they were seeing. Zephyros approached, crystalline structure showing colors associated with contrition. I apologize for my earlier comments. They were inappropriate and based on assumptions that proved incorrect. No offense taken, the human replied. Your equipment is impressive. It serves its purpose well. But inferior to manual skill? No, just different. In rapid combat against multiple targets, your system is superior, faster, more adaptable. But for my purposes, for what I train to do, this works better. Neither is wrong. Both are right for different situations. Krallis rumbled forward. Would you? The massive Dranthian began, uncharacteristically hesitant. Would you be willing to explain your calculation methods? I find myself curious about techniques I dismissed as primitive. The human checked her timepiece. I have 2 hours before my next lecture. There is a study hall on level 7. If you would like, I can walk through the basic mathematics. What followed was perhaps more educational than the formal class. A dozen cadets, representing 8 species, gathered around a human with a notebook and a rifle, learning mathematics and physics they thought they had outgrown. Learning that computers had not made understanding obsolete, merely optional. And that optional understanding left gaps that sometimes mattered. By the end of the impromptu session, even Thesix admitted that manual calculation provided insights that automated systems abstracted away. I have been shooting for 6 years, the Moravian said, 6 eyes blinking in sequence. And I never truly understood why wind deflection followed that particular curve. I simply let the computer calculate it. Now I understand. This knowledge makes me better even with computer assistance. The human packed her materials. That is the point. Technology should enhance understanding, not replace it. Your computers are tools, powerful tools, but tools work best when the user understands the principles behind them. As the group dispersed, Zephyros lingered. Why do you use such equipment when better options exist? Surely you could afford modern sporting rifles with computational assistance. The human smiled. I could. I have tried them. They make shooting easier. Too easy. I do not shoot for ease. I shoot for mastery. For the satisfaction of knowing that when I hit the target, it was my skill, my calculation, my discipline. The computer does not get that satisfaction. I do. Is that not inefficient? Depends on how you define efficiency. If the goal is maximum results with minimum effort, yes, very inefficient. If the goal is personal excellence and mastery of craft, then it is perfectly efficient. Different goals, different methods. Zephyros resonated thoughtfully. I think I understand. Your species has a saying, I believe, about journeys and destinations. The journey matters as much as the destination. Yes. When you let the computer do everything, you arrive at the destination but miss the journey. And for me, the journey is the entire point. 3 months later, at the Academy's annual exhibition match, attendance records were broken. Everyone wanted to see the human with a primitive rifle compete against the galaxy's best shooters with the best equipment. She placed first in the long-range precision category, third in rapid engagement, and dead last in close-quarters battle, where her manual system simply could not match computer-assisted speed. Nobody mocked her scores. In the audience, Commander Vecthrall sat with the senior staff, watching cadets who had learned that different approaches could coexist without one invalidating the other. watching future officers who would command forces equipped with cutting-edge technology, but who now understood that technology served the soldier, not the other way around. "She has changed how they think," Illyra commented. "Subtly, but significantly." "Good," Vecthrall replied. "Every generation needs someone to remind them that newer is not always better. Different is just different. The mark of true intelligence is knowing when to use which approach." On the range, the human lined up her final shot of the competition. 3,500 meters, exhibition distance beyond regulation. Wind gusting to 40 kilometers per hour. An impossible shot by any reasonable standard. She consulted her notebook, adjusted her scope, settled into position, found that predatory stillness, fired, 0 deviation. The crowd, representing 47 species from across known space, erupted in applause. Not because a human had beaten their best technology, but because they had witnessed mastery of craft, dedication to excellence, and the proof that some skills transcended technological advancement. In the end, that was the real lesson. Technology evolved constantly, always improving, always advancing. But the dedication required to achieve true mastery, the discipline to pursue perfection for its own sake, the willingness to take the long, difficult path when easier options existed. These things were universal. These things were timeless. And these things deserved respect, regardless of what species demonstrated them or what equipment they chose to use. The human packed her rifle for the last time that day, the same meticulous care she always showed, unaware that she had become something of a legend in academy circles. The cadet with the primitive rifle who outshot everyone, not through better technology, but through better skill. The story would be told to incoming students for years, a reminder that assumptions based on appearance could be dangerously wrong. But that was tomorrow's concern. Today, she had hit every target she aimed for, proved that skill could match technology when honed to perfection, and earned the respect of warriors from across the galaxy. Today was a good day. She walked off the range, rifle case on her shoulder, notebook in her pocket, and the satisfaction of mastery in her heart. Behind her, cadets who had arrived thinking they knew everything about marksmanship dispersed, knowing significantly more and understanding how much they still had to learn. The galaxy continued spinning, technology continued advancing, and somewhere, a young shooter picked up a rifle and began the long journey toward mastery. Inspired by a story about a human who proved that the old ways still worked when practiced with dedication. Commander Vecthrall watched her go, mandibles clicking in amusement. 4 million rounds, he said to nobody in particular. That is not training. That is devotion. That, Illyra corrected with a smile, is what separates good from exceptional. She did not become a master because she had talent. She became a master because she was willing to fire 4 million rounds. Most beings, regardless of species, will never have that dedication. And that, ultimately, was the truth that the Academy learned that semester. Technology could make the average person good. Training could make the good person better. But mastery, true mastery, required something that no computer could provide and no shortcut could reach. It required dedication measured in decades, effort measured in millions of repetitions, and the willingness to choose the difficult path when easier options existed. It required the heart of someone who shot not for efficiency or practicality, but for the pure satisfaction of perfection achieved through skill alone. The galaxy had nearly forgotten such people existed. One human with a primitive rifle reminded them. And the instructors smiled, knowing that this lesson, this story, would echo through the Academy's halls for generations, teaching cadets that they should never, ever mistake simplicity for inadequacy or mock equipment they did not understand. Because somewhere, someone using that supposedly primitive equipment might just be a master craftsperson about to demonstrate that expertise transcends technology.